You probably have heard the phrase, we live in a small world, and that has become more evidently true in the past few years than it might have ever been at any other point in human history. Consider for a second moments where you have interacted or been affected by things on a global scale. I've got a few examples of this that we could consider. Economically, think about some of the supply chain issues or inflation issues that we've experienced in the past few years, or even just consider COVID as a whole. The factors that happen in one place oftentimes dictate what happens in another. And as we experience these things, we often find out that we're not alone. The same thing should exist in education, but does it? Are we crafting environments where students can be global citizens? I would say no. And there's a lot of ways that we can go about this, but I believe that Twitter has the capabilities to help close this gap. So let's talk a little bit about this. What ways can Twitter help close this gap? Take a moment, think about this just in your own practice as a teacher. Can you use social media to create a classroom environment where students are actively engaging as a global citizen? If you're anything like me, the answer is probably not enough. But I'm here today to talk about a few ideas that have been posted about, that have been written about in articles, and could be considered to be best practice and something that I would recommend that you might want to consider taking on and using in your class. So I teach social studies, so I am constantly thinking about how can we best create global citizens. And a global citizen to me is someone who can function both as an economic actor but also as a political actor in the 21st century. Thinking back to an event that happened a little while ago, the Arab Spring. In 2011, this event, this protest, this revolution within the Middle East starts in places like Egypt. They're protesting against bad government, the lack of rights, and are looking for more liberty as they evolve. This is all taking place at the same time that Twitter and the internet is also evolving. And the Arab Spring has this direct relationship with it. People are posting hashtag Egypt to tell a little bit more about what is going on at that time, to get the perspectives of Egyptians or other Middle Eastern individuals, as many different countries experienced the Arab Spring in 2011 and the years to come. But this information is extremely important and is something that's so beneficial to students. If students are going on Twitter, if they were going on Twitter in 2011, for example, with this, they would be able to figure out and engage with the current events that are taking place. And by using hashtags, find this information in real time. Let's consider another way that we can use this. Primary sources are a huge part of social studies classrooms. The only problem with this is the fact that primary sources oftentimes are relatively boring. Why? They're old written documents or excerpts. Sometimes you might get a picture, but they're things that are from a long time ago. Well, with the digital age, we have arguably the most amount of primary source data that we have had at any point in human history. And in addition to this, it's relatively easy to find on Twitter. Take, for instance, something that's happening right now. If you have not been paying attention to what's taking place in the news, there was a terrible earthquake over the past few days that took place in Turkey and Syria. This earthquake has been devastating and has been considered to be one of the worst humanitarian crises due to a natural disaster in this part of the world in upwards of a century. Because of this, unfortunately, we have a lot of tales of experience, and these experiences are oftentimes pretty harsh and pretty terrible. But we can search on Twitter using things like hashtag Turkey or hashtag pray for Turkey to find primary source information. We can find people's accounts of what happened. We can find photographic evidence or videographic evidence of what happened. And this can all be curated using hashtags and then filtered also by date. A tool that is incredibly, incredibly important for students to be using and gives students a more engaging way of interacting with primary source data in a way that would not have been possible without a social media such as Twitter. The other big thing that's really important with Twitter and closing this global gap, how do we interact with the people around us, is actually connecting people to outside our classroom. Take a moment and think about the last time that you've had a student interaction with someone that's outside of the educational bubble. Not just teachers, not administrators, not even parents or volunteers. When was the last time you had an authentic experience in your classroom with someone that is outside of the educational bubble? If you're like me, I really can't think of an opportunity that I've had in a very long time where I have solicited the help of someone outside of education. What Twitter gives us the ability to do is connect students to the outside world and connect them in a way that is safe but still extremely meaningful. Look at this infographic here. Students are the teal dot in the center. Students oftentimes are isolated and they only receive information or interaction with their peers, with staff, or possibly any sort of parent volunteer. But finding information from areas outside of those spheres is sometimes hard. By using Twitter, we can connect people in a number of ways. An article from Edutopia that if you would like to read, I will link and cite in the sources if you'd like to take a look at that, talks about the fact that Twitter allows us to connect with many different types of people that we would not be able to bring into our classrooms. One of which is asking experts, that if you've got a question about something, for instance, when you're looking at satellite imagery, is it possible from space to see the day-night line of the sunlight? The question is, if you asked an expert astronomer, they would tell you, yes, you can see that. These types of interactions, whether it's simple or much more complex, Twitter gives us the ability to interact with these individuals, to ask questions, and hopefully, if you get enough traction, get an answer in return from someone who has spent their life trying to understand something in a much more deeper fashion. Another way that we can see these connections is through creating a global classroom. The same Edutopia article talks about the fact that global classrooms or the activities that we're doing in our classroom can go global. For instance, there was a story of a class that was building paper towel tube towers, and they had a set amount of time to grow the tallest tower they possibly could. This then caught on and was not only done in this one person's classroom, but it was done in Chicago public schools. It was even done as far as Ireland. And they were able to compete, they were able to share results, and they were able to have much more meaningful interactions with people from a vast variety of backgrounds. And the third thing that students can interact with using Twitter to create this more global community and a more interactive classroom is the fact that they can then showcase their work with community members. And by community members, I mean just about everybody, not just the people within the town or the school district or the school community, but also people that have just a general interest in this. For instance, if you're doing a project on water insecurity in places like the Middle East or Africa, you could use strategic hashtags to share this not only so that people in the United States see this information or people in your local community are aware of the work and the research that students are doing, but that this information might also gain traction and be something that inspires journalists to focus on an issue more, or focuses international governments or NGOs to focus on big global issues because they're seeing this traction on social media. So, by engaging on Twitter and sharing these ideas, both asking questions, but also sharing results with other classrooms, with experts, and with the general community at large, we are able to make much more meaningful connections in our classrooms. And it also means that you have the ability and you have the power to train the students that we need so desperately in the 21st century. We need students who are going to be active global participants, politically, socially, and economically. And they can't do that just in the bubble of your four walls. Twitter breaks down those walls and allows students to interact with the world that's out there for them. So, what I'd like to hear from all of you is if you've liked this video, tell me a little bit about how do you think you can break down your own walls in your classroom? How can you get students engaging in a global fashion so that they're tackling and they're engaging with the issues that face all of us in this small interconnected world? Thanks for watching.